Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we've got an absolutely epic tech resurrection story for you. We're going to walk through the meticulous step-by-step process of taking a near-dead 10-year-old tablet and quite literally bringing it back from the brink. It's a full-on journey of hitting hard hardware limits, performing some deep software surgery, and eventually, ultimate triumph. Let's get right into it.
So, picture this. Meet our patient for today, a 10-year-old Chuwi Hi-10 Plus. Now, this thing is powered by an Intel Atom Cherry Trail chip, and honestly, it was completely trapped in the past. It was weighed down by this obsolete, super clunky dual boot system. Basically, it forced users to choose between an incredibly outdated Android version and a really old Windows installation. For all intents and purposes, it was just a brick gathering dust in a drawer somewhere, totally locked down by manufacturer constraints that made it incredibly difficult to modernize.
But, rather than just tossing it into a landfill, we had an ambitious goal in mind. We wanted to wipe the slate entirely clean. Just bypass that old dual boot setup completely and install MX Linux. Now, why MX Linux? Well, because it's lightweight, highly customizable, and honestly just perfect for giving aging hardware a powerful, efficient second life. But as you're going to see in a second, this tablet, it was not going to give up its old operating systems without a serious fight.
All right, let's dive right into our first major hurdle, the Threshold Guardian, bypassing the locked BIOS. Okay, so right out of the gate, we hit a strict hardware lock. The tablet's firmware absolutely refused to boot standard Linux. It was aggressively searching only for specific Windows or Android boot files. So how do you get past this without accidentally bricking the whole device? Well, a really brilliant workaround was used. It's basically putting a Windows disguise on a Linux system. They created a fake Windows boot folder and then hid the MX Linux bootloader right inside it, renaming it to look exactly like a Windows file. So when the tablet powered on, it happily found what it thought was Windows, but bam, it launched Linux instead.
The original source actually notes, and I absolutely love this phrasing, that this file logic hijacked is the most robust and elegant method. And they totally hit the nail on the head. It's a massive victory because it safely bypassed that hardware lock without writing anything irreversible to the motherboard. By just using some clever folder structures, the tablet was suddenly booting up completely autonomously.
Moving along to phase 2, the road of trials, taming the touchscreen.
So, we had a running Linux machine, right? Awesome. But the touchscreen was absolute chaos. If you dragged your finger all the way across the physical glass, the cursor would only move halfway across the digital desktop. What we were dealing with here was a high DPI scaling conflict. Basically, the system was zooming the high-resolution visual output by 150% just to make the text readable. But the touchscreen driver? It had no idea. It was still sending raw physical coordinates to a virtual display that had been totally zoomed in.
The fix for this actually came down to one exact mathematical multiplier, 2.13. By injecting this highly precise value into the system's underlying UDEV hardware rules, which is essentially the Linux device manager, the physical touch axes were mathematically stretched to perfectly match the zoomed display. And just like that, the cursor followed the finger flawlessly. Problem solved.
Next up, we hit a wall with our third challenge, the display crash mystery.
You see, taming the touch was really only half the battle. Next was dealing with the tablet's DSi-1 display hardware. That's the internal connector for the screen itself. Whenever we tried to make the screen auto-rotate dynamically, the display would just crash to black every single time. This led to a quick experiment with the touch-friendly KDE Plasma desktop, kind of hoping it would handle the rotation better, but no luck. Plasma was just way too heavy for that aging Intel Atom chip, and it caused these chaotic UI glitches, so a strategic retreat was definitely necessary here.
The crucial takeaway here is that true stability actually required a bit of compromise. To fix it, we had to purge that heavy Plasma desktop entirely, stick strictly to the native XFCE environment, lock in a static 1.5 times visual scale, and, this is the big one, abandon those automatic rotation scripts completely. The hardware literally couldn't handle dynamic rotation commands. True peace was finally found by just accepting the hardware's limits and rotating the screen manually through the settings menu. Sometimes, simpler is just better.
Which brings us to part 4, the abyss, squeezing the memory.
Okay, so the interface was fixed, but we were about to enter the absolute darkest hour of this resurrection, the extreme memory limits. This tablet only has 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, in today's computing world, just opening a few heavy web pages can eat that up in a heartbeat, which forces the system to rely on its incredibly slow internal storage as a backup.
So some really intense software surgery was required here just to keep the performance from grinding to a complete halt.
The game plan was to use ZRAM. If you're not familiar, it's a feature that creates a compressed block of memory right inside the RAM itself. But initial attempts to turn it on completely failed with this terrifying error, "no such device." Yeah, it honestly seemed like the Linux kernel itself was actively fighting back, like it was either missing the module entirely or just straight up refusing to activate that virtual memory block.
Well, actually, it turned out that the breakthrough just required a very specific, super strict terminal command. By explicitly telling the system to load the ZRAM module, forcefully generating exactly one device block, the stubborn kernel finally yielded. The virtual memory device was successfully created.
So here's how it shook out. Out of the 4 total gigabytes of RAM, 2 gigabytes were dedicated as standard memory, and the remaining 2 gigabytes were converted into LZ4 compressed ZRAM. It's kind of like compressing your thoughts so your brain can hold way more information at once. And this miraculously reclaimed space, it allowed the tablet to smoothly run 5 complex Firefox tabs all at the same time without a single stutter. An absolute game changer.
And finally, we arrive at the climax. Part 5, the return, reborn, and connected.
This is where the 10-year-old device emerges from this whole ordeal completely reborn. It is no longer just a piece of e-waste taking up space. It's now this incredibly efficient machine with a built-in battery backup and some serious networking superpowers. We're talking tailscale for global VPN access, syncing to seamlessly share files across devices. It operates as a Samba file server, and it even bypasses a restricted Umbrel Docker prison to sync with a home server node. It's literally a fully fledged hacking and networking multi-tool now. Honestly, it is just amazing what a little software ingenuity can do to aging hardware. By simply understanding the limits of the physical components and applying the right Linux magic, a decade-old tablet is suddenly a highly capable daily driver all over again. So, I'll leave you with this. What forgotten, dusty device is currently sitting in your drawer, just waiting for a thrilling second life? Dig it out.